My own daughter threw me out of the house I built with my own two hands. She screamed that her husband's folks were moving in now, and that I had no place there anymore. I asked her where I was supposed to go. She didn't even blink. Told me coldly, "Go live at the dump." So I left with a grin, not because I was running away, but because I knew it was only a step back before I carried out the plan I already had in mind. It did not take long. Within a month, they had nothing left. Their home, their money, even their sense of happiness had crumbled. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. The phone rang just as I was drying the last of my lunch dishes. That piercing ring cut through the quiet of the house, making me jolt a little. My hands were still damp when I grabbed the receiver, and my heart gave a sudden lift when I saw the name on the screen. Cordelia. She had not called me in 2 months. "Dad," she said, her voice softer than usual, almost sweet. "I hope I am not disturbing you." "Cordelia, honey," I said, trying not to let my excitement show too much. "You could never interrupt me. Hearing your voice is the best part of my day." She gave a little laugh, though it sounded practiced. "I have a surprise for you. Thaddeus and I are coming over tonight with his parents. We want to talk." I set the dish towel down and my mind immediately started working, the way it always did after decades in engineering. "Tonight? That is wonderful. It has been too long. Do you want me to make dinner? I could grab that bottle of Pinot Noir you liked from that vineyard we visited." "No need to cook, Dad," she cut in, her tone firmer this time. "Just be ready for us at 7. This matters." Something in her voice gave me pause, but loneliness has a way of drowning out warnings. "Of course, sweetheart. I will have everything perfect. Are you all staying the night? I can prepare the guest rooms." "We will see how the evening goes," she replied quickly. "I need to run, but we will be there at 7 sharp." Then the line clicked dead before I could ask anything else. I stood holding the phone, her words circling in my mind. A surprise, a conversation. It sounded formal, almost businesslike. But I chose to believe it meant she was ready to mend the distance between us since her mother's passing. Maybe this was the moment I had been praying for. The clock read 2:45 in the afternoon. That gave me a little over 4 hours to prepare. Suddenly, the house felt charged with purpose. I moved from room to room as though I were looking through Cordelia's eyes. The living room needed the vacuum. The bathroom could use clean towels. I worked with the same steady focus that had carried me through 35 years of projects. My first stop was the grocery store on Juniper Boulevard. The March air carried a hint of spring, but the chill of winter still clung to it. I picked up a bouquet of yellow daffodils, her favorite ever since she was a child, and added a bottle of Pinot Noir like the one she had loved last Christmas. At the bakery counter, I grabbed a few small chocolate tarts, the kind she used to beg for on our Saturday trips to Cornerstone Books. Back at the house, I set the flowers in my late wife's crystal vase, the one Cordelia always admired. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window and lit up the petals like golden flames. I laid out the dining room table with our best china, dishes that had been sitting unused far too long. As I wiped down the counters, I caught myself humming something I had not done in months. The house felt alive, waiting. I pulled out photo albums, imagining us flipping through them together. There she was at 6 years old, missing her front teeth and beaming in her yellow dress. At 17, scowling at my camera, but the smile still breaking through. And then on her wedding day, radiant in white silk. Thaddeus stood beside her, sharp in his rented tuxedo, but his grin always struck me as shallow. His parents were there too. Barnaby, flashing that businessman's polished smile, and Octavia, her face frozen in quiet disapproval. They never saw much in me, the man who had climbed his way up from nothing as an engineer. But tonight, I told myself, would be different. Tonight, we would be family again. I showered and dressed in my best casual shirt, the blue one Cordelia once told me brought out my eyes. The mirror showed me a 58-year-old man trying to hold on to a little youth, but hope gave my face a glow I had not seen in years. My hair, more gray than not, was neatly combed. By 6:30, everything was set. The scent of lemon cleaner hung in the air, mingling with the daffodils. The wine rested on the sideboard. The chocolate tarts waited on china plates. I eased into my chair by the front window, watching for headlights on Sycamore Lane. The anticipation reminded me of Christmas morning as a boy, that buzzing feeling of waiting for something wonderful. The sky dimmed, streetlights flickering on one by one. 7 o'clock was almost there. I heard car doors close outside. I straightened my shirt, smoothed my hair in the hallway mirrors, and glanced at the frosted glass. 4 figures walked toward my front door. My chest thudded with nervous energy as I hurried to the door and opened it before they even had the chance to knock. I tried to greet them with a smile I hoped looked warm and genuine. "Cordelia, Thaddeus," I said. But the moment I saw her, my smile wavered. She wore a long black coat that gave her the appearance of someone coming from a funeral. Her face was stiff, closed off. No smile, no hug. "Hello, Dad." Her voice carried none of the warmth she'd used on the phone just hours earlier. Thaddeus shoved his way past her, the stench of whiskey hitting me like a slap. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw hard with aggression. And trailing close behind were Barnaby and Octavia Whitmore, looming in my doorway in their expensive coats, standing as if they were security guards. Come in," I said, trying to hold on to some normalcy. "I prepared dinner. I even opened the wine you love." "We are not here for dinner," Octavia Whitmore announced flatly as she marched straight into my living room without even asking. Her gaze darted around, taking inventory of every piece of furniture, every belonging. She brushed her hand over my wife's crystal vase and sneered. "Cheap flowers." I froze, baffled. "They're daffodils," I muttered. "Cordelia's favorites." "Dad, sit down. We need to talk." Cordelia finally looked at me, but her eyes were colder than the January rain. Barnaby Whitmore had already pulled out his phone, snapping picture after picture of my kitchen and dining room like an appraiser. Click. Click. "What is he doing?" I asked. "Evaluating the property," Octavia said bluntly as she dropped herself into my late wife's favorite chair like it was hers now. "My son's family is moving in here, so you need to leave." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I gripped the back of the sofa just to steady myself. "What? No, I do not understand. This is my home. I have lived here for 30 years. Cordelia cut me off, her voice sharp as ice. "If you need a place, go live at the dump. We need this house." Thaddeus staggered closer, his breath heavy with liquor. "We already arranged things with the police. Do not cause problems." I stared at my daughter, searching desperately for some trace of the girl I had raised, the woman I had cherished. But all I saw was a stranger. No, worse than a stranger. An obstacle. "Cordelia, sweetheart," I whispered. "What is happening? Is this about money? If you need help—" "You are leaving tonight," Octavia interrupted, her voice leaving no room for argument. "You have 1 hour to pack what you need." My knees gave out, and I sank onto the sofa, my head spinning. On the dining table, the chocolate tarts sat untouched. The wine rested in its decanter, breathing for no one. Everything I had prepared out of hope now felt like a cruel joke. "This is my house," I whispered. Barnaby slid his phone back into his pocket and said coolly, "Not anymore. Cordelia is our daughter-in-law. Family looks after family." The irony burned. I looked around at the life I had built in this place. 28 years of memories with my late wife, a home filled with love and sacrifice. And here they were, standing in my living room like conquerors dividing up spoils. My eyes lingered on Cordelia one more time. She was the same woman who had called me 6 hours earlier, promising a surprise, talking of a conversation, letting me believe for one hopeful afternoon that I still mattered. Something settled deep inside my chest, not rage, not sadness. Something colder, sharper. A calculation. "All right," I said softly. The room froze. They had expected me to break down, to cry or beg. Octavia's eyebrows shot up. Thaddeus's aggressive stance slipped just a little. I stood, walked to the closet, and pulled out my old leather briefcase. "I will pack a few things." The silence between us was tight as a wire, stretched to the breaking point. They waited for sobs or shouting, but I moved steadily, just as I always had through decades of engineering work. In my bedroom, I pulled down the worn suitcase from the shelf. The leather was cracked, but the latches still snapped shut with perfection. Every item had its order, its purpose. "All right, I will leave," I said evenly, folding shirts with practiced care. "But remember, I have been an engineer my entire life. I know how to put things together." I paused, looking at them over my shoulder, "and I know how to take them apart." Cordelia shifted uneasily. "What do you mean by that?" I met her gaze for the first time since they arrived. Nothing, daughter. Just wishing you happiness in this new home of yours. From the living room, Octavia's voice cut sharp and triumphant. Finally, some sense. I continued packing. Bank statements from the cabinet, insurance papers, the deed to the house, though I knew it meant nothing now. My engineering licenses and certifications, 35 years of work reduced to a folder of documents. Cordelia lingered in the doorway, watching me in silence. Maybe a flicker of guilt stirred inside her, but when Thaddeus barked her name from the kitchen, she turned and walked away. The last thing I packed was Isadora's photograph, the one from our anniversary dinner 3 years back. Her smile in that picture radiated warmth, a warmth this house had lost the moment it filled with strangers who carried my blood, but not my heart. 20 minutes. That was all it took to compress a lifetime into a suitcase. I rolled it through the living room while they sat waiting, circling me like buzzards watching something fade away. Barnaby was at it again with his phone, snapping shots of anything that looked valuable. Octavia had already claimed Isadora's chair, rearranging the throw pillows like she owned the place. The utilities are still under my name, I said quietly. You'll need to transfer them. We will handle that, Barnaby answered without glancing up. At the door, I stopped and studied them, faces of people I had loved, supported, and sacrificed for. Cordelia kept her eyes down, refusing to meet mine. Thaddeus leaned toward the sideboard, reaching for the wine I had opened in celebration. Octavia's gaze lingered on my wife's crystal as if she was already dividing it up. Well then, I said, gripping the suitcase handle tighter, I guess this is goodbye. None of them spoke. The air outside hit my face sharp and cold. March and Bellingham still carried winter's bite, but the chill cleared my head. I loaded the suitcase into the trunk of my Honda, the car Isadora and I had bought together 5 years earlier. Reliable, dependable, like I used to be. I drove past streets I knew like the back of my hand, though now they felt foreign. Past the schoolyard where I once dropped Cordelia off for class. Past the park where we had held her graduation party. Past the grocery store where I had shopped that very afternoon for a dinner no one wanted. The automated teller machine glowed harsh white in the parking lot of a convenience store that never closed. I slid in my card, checked balances, pension, Social Security, savings stacked up from decades of careful living. Not rich, but steady. More than they ever suspected. 15 minutes later, I pulled into the Driftwood Lodge, a plain little motel wedged along a commercial strip. Nothing fancy, but clean. The young woman at the front desk barely looked up as I paid cash for 3 nights. Room 184. 4 walls, a single bed, a tiny television, a table, and a bathroom stocked with thin towels and soap the size of matchbooks. The place smelled faintly of carpet cleaner. Basic, but it would do. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. A problem had presented itself. Time to engineer a solution. Morning light leaked through thin curtains. For a brief second, I forgot where I was. Then memory hit me like a bucket of ice water. The betrayal. Yesterday, I logged into my bank account. The numbers glowed steady and strong. Pension, Social Security, years of careful savings. More than enough to begin. Then I checked an account I had almost forgotten, one Cordelia and I had opened when she turned 17, her very first checking account. My name was still listed as co-owner. She had never bothered to remove it. The balance on the screen pulled a smile out of me for the first time in a full day. 30 years I gave and gave, I murmured into the empty motel room. Now it is time I take back what is mine. I closed the laptop and headed for the shower. The water scalded hot, stripping away confusion, washing off pain. All that remained was focus. Engineering focus. By 10:15, I was in the glaring lights of Circuit Junction. A young clerk with streaks of purple in her hair barely looked up from her phone. I needed a prepaid phone, I told her. Something simple, and a cheap laptop I can travel with. She led me to a wall of electronics and pointed without much interest. I chose a flip phone and a no-frills laptop. Cash only. No trail. Nothing that would tie back to Ezra Blackwood. Setting up a home office, she asked as she bagged the items. Remote consulting, I said. Close enough to the truth. Next stop, a small real estate office in an old house on Meridian Road. A nameplate read Vera Kingsley. She looked up from her screen with the eager smile of someone who lived on commission. How can I help you today? She asked. I need a 1-bedroom apartment. Month-to-month lease if possible. I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. I work online, so strong internet is important. Her fingers rattled across the keyboard. What is your budget? I gave her a number. Comfortable, not extravagant. The kind of tenant landlords liked. Her smile widened. I have a unit on Fairhaven with fiber optic internet, perfect for remote work. When would you like to move in? Today, I said. She blinked, surprised. That is ambitious, but I admire ambition. Let me see what I can arrange. 2 hours later, I was signing a lease for a clean one-bedroom apartment just 11 blocks from my old house. Near enough to watch, near enough to plan. The new place was far enough from my old neighborhood that I would not run into anyone by accident. Vera handed me the keys with brisk professionalism. The internet should be up by tomorrow morning, she said. Anything I should know about the neighborhood? I asked. She grinned. Just where to find good coffee. There are 3 spots nearby that locals swear by. I thanked her and stepped into my new apartment. The smell of fresh paint and industrial carpet greeted me. Empty rooms, bare and echoing, felt like a blank slate. I dropped my suitcase in the bedroom and set my laptop on the kitchen counter. Afternoon sunlight poured in through spotless windows, dust drifting in the beams like tiny seeds waiting to sprout. I powered up the new laptop and began writing lists. What I had, what I needed. Resources, timelines, phase 1, objectives. Outside, Bellingham kept moving with its steady hum. Ordinary people, living ordinary lives. Inside those walls, I was laying the groundwork for something far from ordinary, something no one expected. I pulled out my old phone and scrolled through contacts. Cordelia's office number, Thaddeus's cell, the Whitmore's home address, now my stolen home. So many details. So many vulnerabilities. I cracked my knuckles and began to type. By Wednesday morning, my kitchen table had transformed into a war room. 4 manila folders sat in a neat row, each labeled with a name. Cordelia, Thaddeus, Barnaby, Octavia. I opened my laptop and started filling in what I already knew. Cordelia's workplace, her lunch routines, the places she favored. Thaddeus's job site downtown, his habits after hours. Barnaby and Octavia's temporary residence, my former address. But gaps still remained. I needed sharper details. The soft spots. Thursday evening, I sat at the bar of the Emerald Bay Gaming, a ginger ale in hand. The bartender Beatrice, a talkative woman with deep local roots, chatted easily. Does that man show up often? I asked, nodding toward the blackjack tables. Thaddeus sat hunched over his cards, shoulders tight, sweat glistening at his hairline. Beatrice followed my gaze. Oh yeah, been losing plenty these past few weeks. Keeps saying he'll square things up once he closes on a house sale. I sipped slowly, watching him shove chips forward with desperate flicks of his hand. He seems confident. Beatrice leaned closer. He better be. Some of the people he owes do not take kindly to delays. Thaddeus stumbled from the table, flushed from whiskey and defeat. I lifted my camera and caught him through the zoom lens, clear shots of his face, his condition, the company he kept. Evidence. The next morning, I shadowed him to his construction site. Greystone Construction, a mid-sized firm with offices in a sleek glass building on Cornwall Avenue. At 11:30, he slipped out for what looked like an extended lunch. He was not alone. A woman, auburn hair, tailored suit, maybe 30 years old. She walked close beside him. His hand brushed her back with a familiarity that told its own story. Across the street, I caught every detail. Their gestures, the kiss she gave him before stepping into her car. More evidence. That afternoon, I stopped by the Whatcom County clerk's office. Public records confirmed what I suspected about Barnaby Whitmore: failed investment in a restaurant chain, $31,000 in tax liens, business license suspended for unpaid state fees. The Whitmores weren't just struggling, they were sinking. By evening, my kitchen table was covered with photographs, printed records, and notes written in my careful hand. Thaddeus's gambling debts, his empty promises about selling a house, his affair with a woman who had plenty to lose, Barnaby's unpaid taxes and shuttered business license, Octavia's dependence on her husband's broken finances. Each folder now held enough to break them cleanly. I leaned back, feeling the quiet satisfaction of an engineer who has mapped every weak joint in a structure. Their so-called triumph over me rested on a foundation riddled with cracks. My old phone buzzed on the counter. Cordelia's number still glowed on the screen. I smiled faintly. The demolition could begin. Saturday morning arrived, and with it the clarity I knew well from years of solving structural problems. I spread the files again on the table, not for analysis this time, but to plot the order of attack. Cordelia first. Her finances would fold fastest. Barnaby next. The government would chew up what was left of him. Thaddeus after that. Gambling debts and an affair offered plenty of ways to tighten the vice. And Octavia, she would fall when the rest of them crumbled. Octavia would come last. She leaned entirely on the others, and once they crumbled, she would have nothing left to stand on. Over the next 3 days, I methodically visited each location. First, Cascadia Trust Bank on Saturday morning, the very same place where Cordelia and I had opened her first checking account nearly 2 decades ago. I want to adjust the access permissions on this savings account where I'm listed as the primary holder, I told him, sliding across the paperwork I had prepared. He reviewed the forms with practiced precision. These changes will go into effect right away, Mr. Blackwood. As the primary account holder, you can now require co-signature for large withdrawals. Perfect. Notify me if anyone tries to bypass that, I said. He made a few notes on his screen. Would you like to set daily withdrawal limits for the secondary account holder? Yes, $150 maximum. Anything larger needs my written approval. Cordelia would find out soon enough. Rent payments bouncing, grocery purchases denied. The panic would be immediate, and it would be total. Monday afternoon found me in Atticus Drummond's office, attorney at law. His walls were covered with diplomas and certificates, each one reinforcing his credibility. I put $19,000 into that house over the past 5 years, I explained, laying out receipts. New roof, foundation repairs, kitchen remodel, all documented. He studied the papers carefully, as if weighing each page on an invisible scale. You have legal grounds here, Mr. Blackwood. These improvements give you enforceable rights to the property. Good, I said, but I don't want to act just yet. I want them to realize on their own what a mistake they've made before I take this through the courts. His eyebrows lifted slightly, curiosity flickering across his face. That's an unusual approach. But your case is solid. You can move forward whenever you choose. Exactly. I'll let you know when the time is right. By Wednesday, I submitted my final documents to the Washington Department of Revenue. The clerk at the counter, a weary woman in her 50s, accepted the manila envelope I handed her without much expression. Anonymous submission of possible tax irregularities? She asked. Yes. Barnaby Whitmore, business owner. Here's documentation of unreported income, questionable deductions, and suspended business licenses. She stamped the envelope and dropped it into a tray labeled Investigation Required. Bureaucracy would take it from there, grinding forward with its usual slow but relentless force. By the time I returned to my apartment at 5, the day's work was done. I poured myself a rare glass of wine, feeling the weight of progress. Outside my window, the city lights of Bellingham blinked on one by one like little promises of what lay ahead. The first dominoes had tipped. Cordelia would hit her financial wall within days. Barnaby's tax troubles would arrive in weeks. Thaddeus's gambling debts would keep swelling with interest. I opened my laptop and outlined Phase 2. Monday morning unfolded just as I had engineered. My phone buzzed at 11:15 with a bank notification. Multiple failed attempts to access the restricted account. Cordelia had tried and failed. I sipped my coffee, logged into the bank portal, and reviewed the record. 7 failed logins in 15 minutes. 2 calls to customer service, 1 urgent review request, all denied, exactly as planned. At 11:45, Cordelia's number flashed on my phone. I let it roll to voicemail. Dad, it's Cordelia. Her voice played back moments later, urgent but still trying to sound calm. Something's wrong with the account. The bank says you locked it down. Please call me back. This has to be a mistake. The second call came 18 minutes later, and her voice cracked. Dad, I can't pay the rent. I couldn't even buy coffee in front of my coworkers. My card was declined. Please, whatever this is, we need to fix it now. I ate lunch as her third message played. She broke on the word help. By afternoon, she had pulled Thaddeus into it. Mrs. Ashworth called me that afternoon to tell me she could hear their raised voices through the walls. Dad's money is blocked, Cordelia said, panic sharpening her tone. How are we supposed to cover the mortgage? Thaddeus's voice was already heavy with midday drinking. Relax, we'll figure something out. Maybe we can sell something from the house. This isn't random, Cordelia snapped. The bank said the account restrictions were placed by the primary holder. That means Dad did this deliberately. Thaddeus snorted. Your father? No way. He wouldn't even know how to pull something like that off. I smiled at that. His underestimation would serve me well. At 2:45, the mailman delivered an official envelope from the Washington Department of Revenue to Barnaby Whitmore's office. The audit process had officially begun. By 3:30, Mrs. Ashworth called me to report that Cordelia was pacing around, clearly agitated. Through their shared wall, she could hear the conversation. Barnaby, we have problems, multiple problems. Dad locked our bank account, and the tax office wants to audit your records. That's impossible, Barnaby growled. Your father doesn't have that kind of pull. The bank says otherwise. He's the primary account holder. He can shut me out anytime he wants. Silence stretched long, then Barnaby's voice dropped. Where is he now? I don't know, Cordelia admitted. He won't answer my calls. The neighbors say they haven't seen him since he left. Another silence. Then Barnaby again, quieter, more unsettled. Cordelia, what exactly did we step into that night? Mrs. Ashworth told me she heard her slump into what must have been my old chair, the wood groaning beneath her weight. Her voice was soft, almost frightened. I think we underestimated him. Badly. Wednesday morning arrived. Phase 2 was ready. I spread Thaddeus's incriminating photographs across my kitchen table the way an attorney might lay out exhibits for trial. 12 clear shots, him with that auburn-haired colleague, outside her apartment, in her car, even dining downtown during hours he should have been on the clock. Alongside the photos, I had casino receipts, bartender statements, and a documented trail of reckless spending that stretched back months. 2 envelopes were waiting. One addressed to Greystone Construction's Human Resources Department, the other to Cordelia's office. By 10 o'clock, Thaddeus's boss was already staring at an anonymous packet that painted an ugly picture. An employee wasting work hours, drinking through his lunch breaks, gambling away his paychecks, and drowning in debt. Greystone Construction advertised itself as a company rooted in family values and trust. Thaddeus no longer fit their image. By 11:30, I observed Thaddeus outside the company's parking lot, his voice cracking as he called Cordelia. They fired me. Just like that. Somebody sent them dirt on me. Cordelia's answer was clipped, stretched thin. What kind of dirt? Pictures of me at the casino, statements saying I owe money. They said I was a liability to the company's reputation. Her voice sharpened. Thaddeus, we're already struggling to buy groceries. How are we supposed to live without your paycheck? That conversation ended when the mail arrived at Cordelia's office. The second envelope had found its mark. 2 hours later, Mrs. Ashworth told me she overheard their heated exchange, and it sounded nothing like husband and wife. I know about the affair, Thaddeus, Cordelia said, her tone flat and dangerous. I want half of everything we have left. He stammered. Cordelia, please. It's not what you think. Photos don't lie, she cut in. While I was holding our family together, you were sneaking off with her. Thaddeus tried to justify himself. I was desperate. The gambling got out of hand. She was only a distraction. This all started because of what we did to your father, and now... And now what? Cordelia snapped. You're just like him, a disappointment. The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter throwing the same word at her husband that she once reserved for me, never realizing the man she dismissed had engineered the collapse she was now drowning in. Thaddeus's voice wavered, full of panic. This can't be random. First your dad locks the money. Then I lose my job. Now these pictures? Somebody's coming after us. A heavy silence hung in the air, and then I heard him whisper the conclusion he dreaded. Your father. Cordelia gave a bitter laugh. My dad couldn't even manage a birthday party, let alone some elaborate scheme like this. Then explain how everything fell apart so quickly, he fired back. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. Thaddeus was finished, both as an employee and as a husband. Cordelia's marriage was splintering while her finances caved in. They were beginning to grasp just how badly they'd misjudged me. Tomorrow would begin phase 3. Friday morning arrived as predictably as clockwork. I knew they would come, desperate and rattled, convinced that intimidation might succeed where their planning had failed. I lined up my legal documents in neat rows across the kitchen table. Bank statements, receipts for every property improvement, letters from my attorney. Everything clean, everything defensible. At 11 o'clock, the knock came. Officer Castellano stood at my door, looking weary, like a man tired of mediating family quarrels. Behind him, in a patrol car, Octavia Whitmore's face shone with smug expectation. "Mr. Blackwood, we've had a complaint," Castellano said. "Your family claims you've been threatening them. They want you to stop contacting them." I opened the door wider, motioning toward the paperwork spread across the table. "I haven't threatened anyone, officer. I've simply acted within my rights as account holder and homeowner. Here are the documents." He leafed through the correspondence, bank records, attorney letters, investment receipts. His expression shifted from professional concern to irritation at being dragged into something frivolous. "These all look valid. What exactly are they accusing you of?" I laid it out plain. I restricted access to my own account. I consulted an attorney regarding property investments. I filed tax irregularities with the appropriate department, all lawful. I handed him Atticus Drummond's business card. "Feel free to verify with my counsel." 20 minutes later, Officer Castellano delivered the news Octavia Whitmore didn't want to hear. No evidence of threats, no grounds for a restraining order, no police shield for people drowning in their own financial mess. I could hear Octavia spending the rest of the afternoon knocking on doors in my old neighborhood, her voice carrying from house to house. Her voice carried sharp and shrill. "That man is dangerous. He's threatening us, trying to take our home." Mrs. Ashworth's answer came back, steady and unimpressed. "Has he done anything illegal, Octavia?" "Well, no," Octavia admitted reluctantly, "but maybe you should speak to him directly instead of dragging the neighborhood into it." Octavia's smear campaign found the same reception at every door. Neighbors who'd known me for decades weren't convinced that quiet Ezra Blackwood had suddenly become a menace. By 3 o'clock, Barnaby escalated to hiring a private investigator. Silas Crane, parked in an unmarked sedan across from my building, looked more suited to catching insurance fraud than handling systematic revenge. I photographed him from my window, noting his plate and the oversized lens sticking out like a rookie mistake. Honestly, his presence made things easier. Let him waste Barnaby's dwindling money trailing me to the grocery store, library, or coffee shop. He'd find nothing illegal. A text from Atticus Drummond arrived. "Family tried filing harassment complaint, dismissed. All your actions remain legal. Exactly as planned." Desperation creates mistakes, and the Whitmores were proving that principle beautifully. They thought they were fighting a bitter old man lashing out. In reality, they were up against a systematic opponent. Phase 3 would make the difference clear. Saturday morning, I sat surrounded by proof of total victory. Cordelia locked out of the bank, Thaddeus ruined professionally and personally, Barnaby under tax investigation. Every piece had fallen exactly into place. Yet instead of satisfaction, I felt hollow. While organizing files, I found a manila envelope I hadn't noticed before. Isadora's letters from the brief separation we endured 28 years ago. I opened one carefully, recognizing her handwriting like an old song. My darling Ezra, she'd written, "Anger makes us act in ways we regret. Proving you're right doesn't always make us happy." Her words hit harder than I expected. Isadora always cut through my engineering solutions to the heart of things. Even in anger, she never lost sight of what mattered. One letter read, "Revenge won't bring peace. Justice is worth pursuing, but there's a difference between making them pay and making things right." That phrase echoed in me as I drove to Bellingham Bay Cemetery. I hadn't visited since her funeral 6 months earlier, but now I needed her counsel. Standing by her headstone under the oak, I asked aloud, "Would you forgive them or fight for justice?" The rustling leaves carried her voice in memory, not magic. "You've already won. They know they can't break you. But destroying them won't bring home back or heal Cordelia's choices." I touched her name etched in stone. "I've broken them completely, and it doesn't feel like victory." Her laughter lived in my memory. "Because you're not a destroyer, Ezra. You're a builder. 35 years of solving problems by creating solutions, not tearing things apart." The sun warmed the granite beneath my hand, and I finally understood. There is a difference between making them pay and making things right. That evening, back at my apartment, I spread my documents again, but this time not for destruction. I began drafting a different kind of letter, one to Atticus Drummond, outlining legal action for property recovery. Phase 3 would still show the difference between us, but it would be a difference Isadora could respect. Monday morning carried the clarity her memory gave me. I arranged my files into 3 neat stacks: property investments, financial evidence, and criminal documentation. All legitimate, all precise, all legal. By 10:15, I sat across from Detective Maxine Cross at the Bellingham Police Bureau. She studied my paperwork with the practiced eye of someone who had seen family quarrels slide into criminal territory before. "Mr. Blackwood, you have enough here to pursue criminal charges," Detective Maxine Cross said as she flipped through Barnaby Whitmore's tax files. "We're looking at fraud, tax evasion, possibly even conspiracy to cheat you out of your property investment." I slid the stack of photographs of Thaddeus's gambling habits across the desk. "I'm not looking for revenge," I told her. "I want justice handled the right way." Her brows lifted just a little. "Most people in your shoes would be demanding blood." "My wife taught me the difference," I said. "There's a line between making someone pay and actually making things right." She wasted no time. Within 2 weeks, an arrest warrant was signed for Barnaby Whitmore on tax evasion charges. The same methodical approach I'd used in my private campaign was now being used by the system itself, and it fit like a perfectly engineered solution. 3 days later, our court hearing was scheduled. Judge Hawthorne, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, listened as Atticus Drummond laid out the documentation I'd kept. "Mr. Blackwood invested $19,000 in improvements to this property," Atticus explained, sliding the receipts forward. "Roof replacement, foundation work, a remodeled kitchen. He has legal standing as a co-owner." The judge looked through the contractor invoices, the bank statements, every receipt. Then she gave her ruling without hesitation. "The house is returned to Mr. Blackwood, rightful owner. Defendants must vacate within 48 hours. The bang of her gavel echoed like the final click of a design locking into place. 2 days after the court ruling, the sheriff's deputy arrived at my old front porch, handing Octavia Whitmore the eviction order. I watched from across the street as the familiar cycle played across her face. Shock, anger, frantic calculation. But this time, she wasn't up against me alone. She was staring down the authority of the court. Cordelia stepped outside with a suitcase, moving stiffly, like her body had forgotten how to feel anything but shock. Thaddeus followed, empty-eyed, carrying the weight of his own bad choices. They packed the car in silence. No shouting, no last-minute threats, just the quiet collapse of people who had finally hit consequences they couldn't bend or escape. At 4:30, I walked through the doorway of my home for the first time in 3 weeks. It looked the same, but it felt completely different. They hadn't broken anything, yet everything had changed. Because I had changed. The light slanted through the kitchen window just like the afternoon Cordelia had called with her surprise. Only now, it didn't shine on false promises. It lit justice restored. I lifted Isadora's crystal vase from the dining table. It had survived untouched, just as my sense of right and wrong had survived my stumble into vengeance. Tomorrow, Cordelia would have to decide what kind of life she would build without money that never truly belonged to her. Tonight, I was home. The morning after the eviction, I stood on my own threshold, my house, legally and morally, mine again. I had already moved my belongings back from the apartment the night before, 3 decades of dignity finally reclaimed. The locksmith had replaced every lock the night before. These keys in my hand were mine, by law and by right. Inside, I found the debris of their rushed exit. Empty food containers in the sink, magazines left scattered, Cordelia's costly face cream abandoned in the bathroom. They had treated my home like a rented motel, never grasping that they were trespassing through my life. I spent the morning wiping their presence away, not with bitterness, but with the steady discipline Isadora would have recognized. Engineers restore the same way they build, assess the damage, set priorities, carry out the plan. New locks, new security system, fresh flowers for Isadora's vase. Slowly, the house remembered it belonged to me. At 3 in the afternoon, my phone rang. Cordelia's number. "Dad?" Her voice was stripped of the arrogance I'd heard 3 weeks earlier. "Can we talk?" For a moment, I thought of hanging up. Then I remembered Isadora's lesson. There's a line between justice and cruelty. "We're talking," I said. I know I was wrong, she began, her words stumbling out like broken pieces. Everything's fallen apart. Thaddeus is drinking again. The Whitmores blame me for Barnaby's arrest. I lost my job because I can't focus on anything. I'm sorry to hear that, I told her. Are you really? She asked, voice trembling with honesty. The question landed harder than I expected. Was I sorry, or was I just satisfied to see consequences unfold exactly as I'd engineered? I thought about it, and the truth was, yes, I was sorry. Sorry it had come to this. Dad, forgive me, please. I know I hurt you, but I'm still your daughter. Silence stretched long, as heavy as the 21 days since she last called me family. Cordelia, I said at last, forgiveness is one thing. Trust is another. You made your choice when you threw me out of my own home. Now you live with it. I can't survive without my money, she whispered. You survived 29 years leaning on me for everything, I answered gently. Now you'll learn to lean on yourself. Dad, please. I closed my eyes and let the words settle. I gave you 29 years of my life, my money, my time, my heart, my home, and when it suited you, you tossed all of it aside. I stood still for a moment, watching the afternoon light stretch across my kitchen window. That light reminded me what I had truly been protecting all along. On the line, there was nothing but Cordelia's uneven breathing. Goodbye, Cordelia, I said, and I ended the call. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine I had been saving for years, the kind reserved for special moments. I sat down in Isadora's favorite chair, letting the weight of the day finally settle. The house was different now, not only because the Whitmore family was gone, but because something else had returned. My self-respect. Restored, not by anger or destruction, but by justice carried out through the proper channels. Isadora, I said into the quiet room, I did this the right way. Justice prevailed. The old walls seemed to answer with their familiar creaks, as if her gentle laugh still lingered here, her approval wrapped into the very bones of the house. I was no longer just the systematic opponent dismantling enemies one step at a time. I was a man who had learned the difference between simply winning and being truly right. Outside, Bellingham carried on with its ordinary rhythm. Inside these walls, I began to think about what to build next. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.